The committee investigating last January's attack on Capitol Hill is set to question Jared Kushner today. Kushner agreed to speak to the committee voluntarily, and he now becomes the most senior member of Donald Trump's White House to testify in the investigation. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitali joins us now for more on this. Ali, good morning. So, this feels pretty significant as we've seen so many people not cooperate, call on executive privilege, that his son-in-law will be testifying. Put that significance in context and then tell me what the committee is trying to find out specifically from Jared Kushner's testimony today.
Well, look, Savannah, from an optics perspective, this is a really big deal because Kushner was not only a longtime top aide in the White House, but he is, of course, also family to the former president. So optically, for the January 6th committee, it does look like the president's son-in-law coming forward voluntarily to talk to them and participate in this interview. That's significant. On the other hand, though, Jared Kushner wasn't in Washington when this was happening on January 6th. He had been overseas in Saudi Arabia, part of his foreign policy portfolio. So in terms of what tangible information he might have in terms of the behind the scenes of what was happening in the White House, it's a little unclear at this point what he could offer the committee. The interesting piece of this, though, is in getting a sense of those Ginny Thomas texts with Mark Meadows, we know from those text messages that she was sending Jared Kushner information about Sidney Powell and other of those fringe conservative lawyers, their legal theories about ways to overturn the election. That could be one of the ways that Jared Kushner could be helpful to the committee here. We know that they're investigating a wide range of things, both including what the former president was doing in those critical hours, but also the ways in which these opposition efforts and efforts to potentially overthrow the election results were coming together. So all of it's part and parcel. It's interesting to see what he might be able to tell them.
Absolutely. And to your point, interesting that a family member will be right there on the stand. Ali, now the Biden White House has weighed in again on the role executive privilege should play in the investigation. Let's first listen to what Communications Director Kate Bedingfield told reporters yesterday.
He's been quite clear that they posed a unique threat to our democracy and that the constitutional protections of executive privilege should not be used to shield from Congress or the public information about an attack on the Constitution itself. And so as a result, the White House has decided not to assert executive privilege over the testimony of Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump.
So what do you make of this stance by President Biden? And also that last little bit there, does this open the door at all for Ivanka Trump to be speaking with the committee next?
Yeah, well, first, what the White House is saying there tracks with everything that they've been saying all along. At each turn of this, when high-profile individuals in the Trump orbit have said they want to cite executive privilege for why they can't cooperate with the committee, the Biden White House and the White House counsel's office have been there with letters saying that they're not asserting executive privilege in this, and they are the White House that would assert executive privilege here. So that's one of the key pieces, and it does officially clear the way for these former White House officials to speak with the January 6th committee. It's kind of a formality, and it's not entirely unexpected. This is the way the Biden White House has been handling these sorts of inquiries. On the Ivanka Trump piece of this, it was months ago now that her voluntary request to appear went out. It was lengthy. You remember there were multiple prongs and things outlined that the committee wanted to talk to her about, including conversations that she might have had with then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, potentially even Mike Pence, certainly with her father, the president. All of that is important to the committee. At this point, though, it's sort of a tea leaf reading, and we'll have to see what comes out of today's meeting on whether or not Jared is some kind of a precursor or potentially something else to getting Ivanka Trump with the committee as well.
So, Ali, we have Kushner's testimony today. Then we also just had this new information this week about those missing phone logs, those 7 hours of when the insurrection was actually happening. You brought up just a moment ago Ginny Thomas's text to Mark Meadows. You know, I think it's important to keep in context here. This is something we've been talking about a lot. It feels like it's been going on for a long time. It's had these starts and stops as people cooperate or not cooperate. But this is an investigation looking for answers. Do all these developments put the committee any closer to finishing this? Or does this ultimately just raise more questions, more people that would need to be talked to? Where are we at with this?
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny that you say this because this is the question I've been asking myself and, frankly, members of the committee all week. At what point, and as journalists, I think we also get this, right? When you're attacking a story and you're asking questions and it leads you to more people, at what point do you put the pen down? And that's the question that this committee has been grappling with over the course of the last few months. You'll remember when we were at the end of the calendar year last year, the big conversation was around this will be the phase of public hearings in 2022. They'll start in February. We'll start building a narrative. That's what the committee's goal was. That has been pushed back. We're at the end of March now. Chairman Thompson has said he wants to finish the deposition phase of this by the end of this month, and that would put hearings, public hearings, in May. He reiterated that to me yesterday as he was leaving votes, but at the same time, we've seen that sliding, and there has been just so much information that comes out. You sort of have to wonder if they're not going to be able to just push ahead with public hearings while also still fact gathering, but that's kind of still up in the air.
Ali Vitali, important context there. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.